Thank you for zooming in today with us. Good morning. On behalf of the Sandbox Centre team, welcome to our Experts in Residence session, Communications and Creativity. If you're interested in learning more about what our Experts in Residence program has to offer, you can head over to our website, sandboxcentre.com, after the session and check it out under the Programs tabs. And Shona and Jonah, Shona and Jan, there we go, have helped countless individuals transform their ability to connect their audience and deliver authentic and meaningful messages with impact. They have combined over 50 years of experience in speaking, teaching, writing, acting, broadcasting, training, and comedy. Today's topic are presentation power up. Top tips to be sure your presentation hits the mark. We're super excited to have them back. If you have any questions throughout this session, please use the Q&A feature that's at the bottom of your screen. We'll be monitoring this throughout, and we will try to get to answering as many of your questions as possible towards the end of the session. Thank you to our community partners for supporting us with the sharing of our events. And of course, a huge thank you to Ovation for being here today with us. So without further ado, please welcome Jan and Shona from Ovation.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Good grief, Shona. 50 years combined experience. We're ancient.
Yeah, it's a little scary.
Did you know that your brain is split in half? Now, apologies if this is news to some of you, but we're going to explain that a little bit today. We live in a very left brain society, and today we are going to talk about how to appeal to your audience's emotion as you power up your presentations. We're very excited to give you all kinds of great tips today, and we hope that you'll take away at least one, but hopefully more tips as we begin. So as you all know, we are very much enamored with the left brain. We're very much about logic and not so much about emotion. We think that everyone makes their decisions based on the facts and the figures. But we are here to tell you today that that is absolutely not true. We make our decisions with our right reptilian brain, and as far as your brain is concerned, the right brain calls the shots. Now we're going to explain how that works. So consider this. You're casually walking along on your favorite trail. It's a beautiful morning. Not so much like this morning. It's a beautiful sunny morning. And out from behind a shrub jumps a saber-toothed tiger. You scream, you freeze for a brief second, and then your right brain kicks in and you begin to run. You're frantically running down the path, and I am pretty sure that at that moment, your left brain is not doing calculus problems. It's not evaluating the pros and the cons of which path you should run. And it's not evaluating the feel of your sneakers on your feet. I am pretty sure that it's your right brain that is screaming in your head, run, run, and please live. So in times of stress, in times of anxiety, in times of emotional uncertainty, and in times of quick decision-making, it is your right brain that is the root of your decision-making. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about how you connect to your audience's emotion as you try and get them to decide they like your product or decide to go with your company or decide whatever it is that you're asking them to decide. So we are going to do that in a couple of different ways, 3 as a matter of fact. First, we're going to talk about what we call the affect effect. And in another word, that is body language. We're going to talk a little bit about how you use your physical self. The second thing that we will talk about is what we call the 1,000-word approach, or excuse me, words, because you're going to use a number of those. And the third thing, well, it's a little bit of a mystery that Shona has in store for you, and she will talk a little bit about that. So I will turn it over to Shona now, and she can tell you a little bit about the mystery approach.
Great. Thank you, Jan. So one of the things we're introducing you today is something called the SBX effect. We're not going to tell you what it is right away because there's method to our madness. It is a memory technique that will also subtly convince your audience to have a positive reaction to your message. I'm going to leave it at that right now because there's a slight quiz involved later on in the workshop, and you're going to actually see the SBX effect as it works. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about what Jan talked about, the affect effect. And you'll see the quote on the screen, the most important thing in communicating is hearing what isn't said, right? One of the things we train our clients in when developing their speaking abilities is this: be careful what you feel because your body is listening. What do we mean by that? So when you find yourself in a situation where you are confident and comfortable, be it social or professional, that confidence is easily reflected in your body language. It also works the other way around. When you find yourself in a situation you're not so comfortable, like a first date or a presentation to your executive team, that lack of confidence, or sometimes flat out fear, is also reflected in your body language. So many of you will have seen the research of the impact of body language and facial expressions on how we interpret messages. Now, depending on whose research you read, anywhere from 67 to 87% of our message comes through in nonverbals, body language, facial expressions. Now, body language or affect can be a complicated thing and complicated to read. In other words, someone sitting there with their arms crossed, maybe they're just cold. Maybe it's not that they aren't receptive to your message. So we think the answer is to spend your time learning to project positive and confident body language as opposed to trying to learn other people's body language. Now, Jen and I are going to demonstrate that in a few minutes, but just a couple of quick tips first. When you want to be assertive, on the left-hand side of the screen, in person, you're standing in front of a group, they're going to see your whole body. We're kind of in that place with video conferencing where everybody's not seeing your whole body. But what happens is we forget about negative leg and feet expressions. So Jan is standing right now in person. So she's got a little bit of leg and feet thing going on, like she's leaning on one hip. She's got her arms crossed. There's the arms in there. And so she's projecting this, image of either being hostile or maybe she doesn't want to be there. I mean, you'll add all of your own interpretations to that. Now, when we are sitting here on a video conference, one of the things that happens is your facial expressions have a lot more impact. So we can only see you from the waist up, which is probably a good thing if you're wearing your pajamas. But if you're like me, it is an acquired skill to have a poker face. So to not react to what's going on in front of you. And that's something that we probably really need to practice, is keeping our faces neutral. So that's on the video conferencing side about looking assertive. And then on the confidence side, our body actually sends that message as well. So you're sitting in front of a computer and you don't want to be leaning over it and hunched over. So, you look like you're, not really prepared, or maybe it's a little intimidating. How you're sitting has a lot to do with that. Thank you, Jan, for coming close up to the screen. So when you're standing in a live situation, we always tell people about putting their feet flat on the ground, feeling the connection to the ground, and having their feet about shoulder width apart, because that makes you feel like you're solid and grounded and connected to the floor. Now, if you're sitting, there's a way to do that too. If you can, keep your back straight, make sure you've got a chair that supports your back really well, and if you can put your feet, you want to be looking to put your feet flat on the floor so you feel that connection, you're sitting up straight, and the posture is affected. Now, effective speakers need to be aware of the physicality that Jan's demonstrating and what their body is saying to the audience. Now, we're going to do 2 exercises here, and I'll stop screen sharing in a second. The first one is about how do you be your message. This poor little cat has had a rough day, and you could probably make all kinds of conclusions about what's happened in that cat's day. We're also going to talk about how you feel your message. Now, this dog is probably having a really good day. So we're going to do 2 exercises where we demonstrate this for you. The first one, Jan will be my my volunteer. And the second one, I will then be the volunteer, and Jan will take me through my paces. So the first one is, I'm going to stop screen sharing for a sec. I'll start my video. and then you can see us in a bigger way. So Jan, this exercise is all about being a particular role and what happens to your body when you do that. So here we go. Jan, I would like you to be an accountant. Any accountants in the group? I don't know. Yeah, we're going for serious, you know, detail oriented. It's your money. We're great. Okay, Jan, be a CEO. I am commanding. I am looking like I got something to say. There's the Superman pose. Maybe CEOs want to be more relaxed, but there you go. That's one interpretation. Jan, you are now an Olympian.
I feel like I should do Superman again.
Yes. So looking confident, standing straight. Maybe you just won the gold medal. Great. Yeah. Okay, Jan, now I'd like you to be a priest. Oh, very pious. You're looking very pious, thoughtful, reflective. Maybe you're in prayer. Mm-hmm. Okay, Jen, now you are a 5-year-old. Exactly, being your message. How about a model? I need more of a duck face. I would like more of a duck face, please. Yes, thank you. Great, and one more. Jen, can you be Donald Trump?
Whoa.
Very good. Okay, great, thank you. But because you're sitting, we want to actually experiment a little bit about what it looks like to use your body language sitting. So now Jan's going to run me through a couple of exercises that will help you feel your message and see what happens to your body and your facial expressions.
So just to add to what Shona says, thank you very much for playing along. Hopefully you stood up behind your computers as well and did some of those fun things. But it really is about what you feel your audience feels. So if you want them to be excited about your presentation, you had probably better be excited about it, and that translates. So that's what we're trying to get you to practice. Most of us are cut off right about here, and our heads don't connect to our bodies very well. So I'm going to ask Shona, as she sits there looking very happy, we're going to try a couple of different emotions for her to feel, if you will. So Shona, I'm actually going to get you to say what I say. So I'll give you the emotion and then you say, I feel X. And we do that just because it kind of helps you, we'll say, infuse your body a little bit. Okay, so could you try, since you're there already, happy for us?
I feel happy.
Very nice. Okay, nice expression. Now, those of you who have ever spoken to someone on the phone and not been able to see their face and they are happy, know that that smile that you see on Shona's face absolutely translates into the voice as well. So very nice. Thank you very much. Now let's try sad.
I feel sad.
Oh, okay. Did everybody feel the right? Everything kind of deflated in that. So that was very good. You could really feel the difference between those two, I hope. Excellent. Thank you very much. Angry.
Oh, you just cut out for me, Jen, so I have no idea what you just said. It's okay.
Nothing. She feels nothing at this moment.
Yes.
Angry, please.
I feel angry.
Oh, okay. A little volume increase, a little intensity, and all of a sudden this presentation went in a different direction. Okay, very nice. Thank you very much. Now try nervous. Now this is one that none of us really want to project, hopefully, so try to give us a feel for what nervous feels like.
I feel nervous.
Okay, excellent. Now I hope you're all trying this as well, and it really is amazing what happens when you say it. And try, if you're not feeling anything right away, try saying it 3 times. I feel happy, I feel happy, I feel happy, and see what happens. Okay, last one, just to the energy a little bit again. How about I feel excited?
Oh, okay, that's great. I feel excited.
Nice. Okay, very nice. That's very nice. So hopefully you can see the difference, obviously, but also hear the difference too, because sometimes when we're doing a PowerPoint, obviously you're screen sharing, so we need to feel that in your voice as well. Okay, thank you very much. So try those little exercises at home and do the Superman pose before you begin your presentation. It's always a good one. Now, Shona is going to share the screen one more time. She's looking, that's her concentrating face.
It
Which
is,
is
and
very good, yeah.
I can't seem to share it anymore.
Oh, darn, I hate it when that happens.
Okay.
And now she's going to give us a little, I think we're on slide number 10, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
And Shona is going to give us now a little word from Shona regarding the Sarek effect. I believe her little surprise. Yeah.
I am indeed. I'm gonna just turn my video off because one of the things we're experimenting with is what does it look like to do a presentation with one person speaking on the screen? What is it like to turn your video off? So you decide what you like better. So I mentioned before that we are going to share this technique with you called the Sarek effect. And just a reminder, it's about memory and having your audience feel positively about your message. But just going back a little bit in terms of the feeling and the being, we wanted to just sum up a little bit of what we're trying to get across. The essence of the feeling and the being is be you. Stop trying to sound like a university professor. Just be you. Be conversational. Feel like you're chatting across a coffee table with a friend. Stop thinking about your hands so much. Let your gestures reflect what you're saying. And as you've just seen, stop worrying about your voice. Feel something. The voice follows what you're feeling. So that's what's going to allow you to really get that emotion across. So that's all about the affect effect. Let's talk a little bit now what Jen and I call the 1,000 words approach. Advertisers have known about this forever, that visuals tell a story much more powerfully than just hearing the story, and they can use it very effectively to their own benefit. As you can see from the slide that's on the screen, very powerful ad about homelessness. Now, statistics suggest that when you put a post on social media and it's got an image accompanying it, it is 10 times more likely to receive engagement. When we understand also that 50% of our brain power is taken up in translating visuals, it makes sense that we as human beings are wired to respond to visuals. So a picture or a visual of some kind really anchors in our brain the message you're trying to send, and also enhances your ability to connect a concept to it. In fact, you may actually do a presentation that's all visuals and still get across some really good points. Now, let's take a look at how you can use visuals to your advantage in your presentation. Yeah.
What's really interesting is that when you begin to use visuals, and we are absolutely encouraging you to use more visuals in your presentations, because all of you know that we become very text heavy when it comes to PowerPoint. So as we're going to scroll through some of these photographs, pay attention to how you feel when you look at them, because what's really interesting is that what you're feeling, your audience is feeling, and so pay attention to the impact that they have. Because as you're doing a PowerPoint, and I get it, you've had 6 meetings already on a Thursday afternoon, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, if I have to go through one more PowerPoint, it's going to slay me. But if you've got pictures that inspire you as well on your PowerPoint, well, imagine what that does to your presentation and your ability to engage your audience. So really give that a go. I think we're going to take a look. Oh, there we go. This is from, I'm sure you can guess, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And seen that one a number of times, it still gives me chills. Okay, it's amazing what impact a photograph can have. And the message, I really don't have to say much. Okay, the prevention beer mug. This one is one of my favorites, and it amazes me every time I see it. And one child is holding something that's been banned in America to protect them. Well, guess which one? And if you see in the bottom, for those of you that don't actually believe it, yes, Kinder eggs were in fact banned in many states. So this is something that you don't really have to say much to get that whoa kind of reaction from your audience. So this is what we're asking you to start to think about. So if you can think about your presentation in pictures, how can I move the audience? How can I impact the audience? How can I make the audience, yeah, I'm going to say it, feel something? Okay, that's what we're looking for. That's a great, great photograph. This one, well, we've all, for years, for decades now, we've been trying to have an impact on people to stop smoking. And well, yeah, this one, this lovely lady is, I'm sure, very dynamic, but she's only 42. And so this ad kind of makes you go, whoa, and it makes you, there's a little bit of humor there behind it as well. So it gets you on two fronts. So again, pay attention to how those make you feel. And guess what? An hour from now, one of those photographs will still be stuck in your head, and you will still remember the message that was attached to them. And that's what you're going for as you present any PowerPoint, really, any PowerPoint. Okay, I hope that helped you. Oh, I like the quote. I didn't read it for you because you can all read on your own. So there you go.
Well, that's really it's a great lesson. When you have short quotes like this, don't read them. The other people have already read them. They know what you're saying. They're interested in the value-added information you're giving. But let's talk a little bit about what happens when you cannot show visuals. Like maybe you've had a malfunction in your screen sharing, your AV in person, and it's just you at the microphone. You can still use visual to vivid effect by weaving them artfully into your storytelling. Now, because I am a chocoholic, let's start with the example of chocolate chip cookies. Now, humans love a good story. They connect us to our history, our sense of community, takes us right back to the beginning of time when we were around our fire in the caves. Now, what can we do when we have no visuals? Well, we can tell a story that actually involves multisensory aspects. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I remember being a little girl, coming home from school, my sister and I would walk in the door, and the smell of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies would waft around as it would get up our nose, and we would feel comfort. And of course, great, we're gonna have chocolate. And you could smell the chocolate newly melted, that lovely, rich, kind of sweet smell. And then you put that warm cookie in your mouth and it just melts. You know, it's that beautiful balance between crisp enough but chewy. Anyway, you know where I'm going with this, and I could paint an entire picture using all the senses. And that's one way that you can put images on the screen of people's imagination in your audience. But there's another thing you can do, and I'm going to stay with chocolate chip cookies as well. So we've developed a technique called using visual anchors to remind people of a particular point. So interestingly, this point is about chocolate chip cookies as well. And it's about a university in the US that did a study of leadership and what happens to someone's brain when they've been given a leadership role in experiments in the lab. Now, all the people in the experiment thought they were there to talk about leadership, and they were, except for that really wasn't the point of the experiment. As they were half an hour into talking about leadership, the research assistant brought in some warm, freshly baked chocolate chip cookies, and what they were trying to figure out is, did having a role as a leader influence people's manners? Did they take more cookies than the rest? Yes, the answer is yes. Did their table manners deteriorate as they ate the cookies and there were crumbs on the table? Yes, just a little bit of leadership. Anyway, the point is that when we have leadership people in our club, we're talking about aspects of leadership, we will often give out chocolate chip cookies for people to take home with them or to eat right there in class to anchor that concept in their mind that even a little bit of authority in a lab setting makes people think that they have the right to do more things. Now, that's not the point of this presentation, but we've had leaders tell us over the years, oh, great, you know, you gave us a chocolate chip cookie and now I never can think of chocolate chip cookies, and it's not attached to some aspect of leadership. So that's how you can develop a visual anchor that people will always remember. I mean, even 10 years from now, people, I know because this has happened to us, they'll probably come up to us and go, chocolate chip cookies. I still associate that with leadership. So that's how you can use a visual anchor when you don't have a screen in front of you. Well, I'm going to take you back to the Sarek effect before we get to our next topic. Remember, I'm trying to remind you all the time, it is a memory device. The Sarek effect is a way we're going to explain to you at the end how it's actually been working. It's a memory device and a device that's going to allow you to have your audience think positively about your message, and you'll see at the end how that worked. Jan.
As we go on, I would like you to think about, as you deliver a PowerPoint presentation, what is your job? Just think about that for a second. What is your job? Is your job just to click the slides? Is your job to, that's all I got, just click the slides? We all know what it feels like to die by PowerPoint. And I suspect that it's probably happened to a lot of people since March in particular, because now we're even in more meetings with more PowerPoints and more sort of endless meetings with that going on. So why I ask you to think about what your job is, I hope that your job is to connect to the audience, and I hope that your job is to maybe inform and maybe entertain just a little bit. So with that in mind, we know you can kill people with PowerPoints. We really do. So we would ask you to not do that. So let's take a look at the logistics of a PowerPoint and creating it. We've already encouraged you to speak more in pictures, think more in pictures, and use them to your impact. But sometimes, obviously, you have to have text on a PowerPoint. There's just no getting around it. Please, please, please do not copy and paste vast amounts of text on your PowerPoint. You'll notice that all of our slides have very few words on them. They're mostly visual, lots of white space, so that your brain gets a little break and the information that's on them you actually see. Also, only 5 to 7 points. We'll show you a little slide here that's got some dots on it. And how many dots? Quick, quick. How many dots? Quick, quick. Are you counting? It's a bit awkward, isn't it? 1, 2, 4. Oh, did I count that one? Okay, it's a little bit tricky. The brain likes to grab things in chunks. It likes to see patterns, and it likes to immediately feel like it knows what's going on. So that is a few too many points for you to grab that number very quickly. So if we go to the next slide, how many? You said 5 right away, didn't you? Why? Because the information is chunked in a lovely, grabbable, I think that's a word, graspable number. And that is what it is with PowerPoint points as well. So please, only 5 at the most PowerPoint points, that's getting to be a lot of points on the page. Only 5 points in your slide. Now, I recommend more and making yourself the star of the show, but absolutely only 5. Now, back to what is your job? Remember, your job is to inform, but also to engage, which is a little bit of entertainment as well. Okay, thank you very much. Keep that in your mind.
So
Shona, we'll talk a little bit about animation.
Right. So on that topic, we think that adding all kinds of animations and really cool things once you get into PowerPoint or Prezi or whatever it is you use is very exciting and interesting for the audience. No, it actually just gets distracting. Now, one of the things you'll notice is that when we had slides that had more than one point on it, like when we were doing the introduction about what we were going to talk about, we revealed them one at a time. Why do we do that? Because if you immediately reveal your entire slide with all the points on it, what happens to your audience? They start reading, like Jan was doing there just now. So even if you've got 3 points, do them one at a time, because people will read the point on the screen and then they switch their brain back to listening to you. But if you reveal the entire slide all at once, yeah, you've lost them already. And we're going to show you some examples of our favorite worst PowerPoints in a few minutes. All right, so animations, again, we can get carried away. Revealing points one at a time is very useful, but some people get really carried away with adding all kinds of animation. And again, you can use animation, but only use it sparingly. For example, you've got a 40-minute presentation today in a webinar. It would be okay if you use some kind of special animation once, maybe twice, if it actually makes your point. But the more animations you have, the more distracting it becomes. You know, another thing people like to do is use all kinds of different animation because they want to show how clever they are in adding animations to their PowerPoints. Again, try to stay away from it. Use it sparingly. Less is more in this case. It has more impact if you only use one approach to animation. Well, that's really great, but what about graphs and statistics? A lot of us work in fields, you know, a lot of our clients are, for example, engineers or accountants, etc., and they have a lot of presentations to make that involve graphs and statistics. We're showing you a very, very simple graph here. It's easy to read. It only addresses a couple of simple things. So our recommendation is when you're showing graphs or statistics, one statistic or theme at a time, please. So this chart is about the sale of blue and red balls. You wouldn't want to have a chart that talks about all the toys you've sold this year. You're going to go one by one. Now that may take you a little bit more time, but that's okay. You can add more slides because you're going to go through them quickly. But if you put, and again, we'll show you examples in a minute, if you put too much information, again, people start reading and you've lost them. So try to follow statistics with a visual wherever possible. So I didn't do it for this PowerPoint, but you can, after showing this chart, maybe you show a picture of a client buying a ball or a happy, you know, child who bought a ball, those kinds of things. So we're going to now show you, and we're showing you this saying no in a number of languages because this is a very universal thing. We work all over the world and we find people really need to get away from loading too many graphs and statistics on their PowerPoint. So take a look at this one.
We know you can do this. We know you have the technology to do this. Please don't.
Yeah,
please
just
don't.
way too much stuff. And again, a lot of it has to do with audience analysis, right? If you've got a highly technical audience and you're doing a technical presentation, you do want to show pie charts and bar graphs and all that kind of stuff. Again, it doesn't matter if they speak your language in terms of your profession. Keep it simple.
Remember what we talked about grabbing information. You want to be able to grab it simply, unlike this.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a student that showed this in one of their presentations. He was a pilot and he was so excited about it. And we're like, okay, what does this get across to us? Well, he was so fascinated with the design of the plane. And we're like, okay, then just show us the plane. You can talk a little bit about the design, but you're going to lose people. All right, here's another one.
Oh,
this is
I feel that there, Shona, I'm thinking there's going to be an accident any minute. I can hear the crashing outside the window as this graph comes up. It's like, what? Yeah.
Now, here, when you look at a visual like this, you could reveal one of these points one at a time, like start with the car and then do an arrow, but you'd have to build it rather than showing it right on the screen like this. If you just,
it takes too long for people to figure out what's going on, and they're starting to ignore you already as you're talking.
Yeah. And here's one of my favorite ones, organizational charts.
Why do people like to show org charts? I really don't understand that. And usually they're under this, there would be names and titles and phone numbers, which, just so you know, nobody from the back of the room can see it, and nobody on their computer screen without doing this can see. So yeah.
Put it in a handout. Put it in a handout and send it out later. Let people know you've got an org chart they can look at, or they can look at it with their handout alongside whatever you're presenting about. Here's a lovely infographic.
Don't you find the colors are quite lovely on this? No idea what it's talking about, but the colors are quite fabulous. So yeah, this one is, if this is the only photograph that you have of whatever this is talking about, maybe if you could zoom into one particular section that you're talking about, because there is no way that your audience can absorb all of that in one go. So yeah, just no, or excuse me, just niet.
Very good. Now we'd like to share with you the 10-time winner of the world's worst PowerPoint. Yes, indeed, there is a contest, and this particular PowerPoint has won 10 years in a row. And here it is, courtesy, yeah,
Yay.
courtesy of the U.S. military in Afghanistan. And the story goes that General Stanley McChrystal from the U.S., who at that point was in charge of forces in Afghanistan, had this up on a screen in a PowerPoint, and he made them stop. He said, don't ever show me a PowerPoint like that again. Like, I want to know the story behind what we're doing in Afghanistan. But there you have it, the world's worst PowerPoint 10 years in a row.
I think it's up for a few more re-election years is what I think is going to happen with that PowerPoint slide. Yeah. What Shona said at the very end is very, very important about thinking about the people behind it. So this fabulous quote, which I am going to read to you because I think it is very important. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. And I think what happens is we get caught up in the images, we get caught up in the technology, we get caught up in the graphs, we get caught up in the statistics, and we forget that behind the screen, if you will, on the other side of some Ethernet cable, is actually a person who wants to hear about the story or the humanity behind the PowerPoint slide. So a way to practice this, and we have done this and it works beautifully, is if you can explain your concept or explain your presentation or your PowerPoint to a 10-year-old and they understand it, then you understand it well enough and can explain it to your audience as well. And it really is a beautiful exercise. And I challenge you all to give it a try, to do your next PowerPoint that you plan to deliver to the board and try and rehearse it, explaining it like you would to a 10-year-old. It's a great exercise because it makes you distill the concepts down and really remember that there are people watching it who really would like to hear about the humanity behind the slides. So that's one of the big messages that we would like to get across to you today. There are always people on the other side.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, Jan, you froze on me a second too. I think the other thing too is that, you know, when you have to explain it to a 10-year-old, you cut out the jargon. A lot of us forget that people not everybody understands the jargon. And you know, thinking about your audience, do you have to explain it? Do you have to say it the long way? We get really used to using jargon. So it helps you do that and get away from that as well. All right, I mentioned at the beginning that you're gonna have a test near the end, and here it is. Now I'm gonna show you 2 words on a screen, and I would like you to think for a second, and obviously we can't get your input, but we've done this a lot in class, so think for a second when you see these 2 words. I'll give you like 2-3 seconds. Which word do you prefer? Okay, so that's been 2 or 3 seconds. Now, we've done this a lot live, as I mentioned, and 100% of the time, people will always pick the word on the right, Sarek versus Ichthyaf. Why is that? Well, most of you, of course, have realized that I've talked about the Sarek effect 3 times now in the presentation. So tiny little, you know, parts of our presentation as we've gone through our session today, I've talked about the Sarek effect. Well, I have a confession to make. There is no such thing as a Sarek effect. It's actually the exposure effect discovered by a researcher named Robert Zayonk, and the exposure effect is all about this. The more often we encounter something, the more we like it. So I set you up through this whole webinar because I kept talking about the Sarek effect, but I really didn't explain what it was other than it's a memory device and, you know, your audience will think positively. But what I was doing was prepping your brain so that when we got to that slide with the 2 words, you would pick Sarek as your favorite word. Now, this is more effective when we've got like a whole day workshop and we do it 3 or 4 times through the day. We're having to compress that time into 40-45 minutes. But that's how the exposure effect works. In your brain, when you see, if I only showed you those words and I didn't set you up 3 times with the Sarek effect, both of those words would be equally appealing to you. Now remember, this works with concepts as well. If we introduced a simple concept and then we just came back to it several times, again, more exposure means you develop a preference. You see one word twice, you start to develop a preference. So I could have showed you the Sarek effect twice and you would have thought, oh, that, yeah, I may have picked that word. But when you've seen it 3 or more times, you develop a strong preference for it. And that is why when we expose people to the Sarek effect 3 times, when we get to that screen with the 2 words, 100% of the time, people have picked Sarek. Now, every once in a while, someone in a group will go, oh, I like Ichtataff better. Okay, great. But this actually works. It's brain science. And what happens is it's also most effective when that exposure to a concept or a word is short and mixed in with other ideas and messages, which is exactly what we did today. Now, when you're thinking about presenting to your leadership team, you want to soften them up a little bit and have them thinking really good things about when you finally get to present. So you might be feeding them the same term or the same idea a few times before your presentation. Works the same way as what we just did today. But it's a very powerful thing if you're involved even in change management. When you want to get your employees to start really buying into something, expose them to it in short little bursts over time. They'll develop a preference.
So it just occurred to me, as Shona was talking, do you hear the interest and the engagement in her voice? Do you hear that she thinks that this is kind of cool and that she wants to share it with you? I know I heard that. So that was very cool. I think that's really interesting. And so we're asking you again to think strategically about your PowerPoint. This is a great, see, now I'm always going to call it the Sarek effect and not the exposure effect, but it's really a way to add interest for you and for your audience when you're doing your PowerPoint, which is great. So we just want to wrap up a little bit as we head toward the end of our presentation. And a few things that we'd like you to think about is be real, be yourself. Don't try and pretend or be something that you're not. Relax and find the enjoyment, find the energy, find the enthusiasm in your voice when you're presenting. Because when you believe and when you're excited about your presentation, we are as well. And whether that's live or whether it's via a screen like we are today, that really does come across. And I know you heard that interest and that engagement in Shona's voice. So please remember that. So we talked a little bit about remember what you're saying, your body is listening. So think about emotions and how they impact you. We talked about think in pictures and try and add some visual impact to your PowerPoint. Shake it up a little bit from lots or too many words, shake it up a bit. And we talked about being strategic. So use the exposure effect to your greatest effect and introduce things to your team as you're making your presentation. Always, always, always consider your role in this. Remember, you're the expert, you're the superstar, you're the presenter. So infuse your PowerPoint with some zip that only you can bring to it. And as the very final thought, with the heart and the brain, you must engage people's humanity. You must engage their emotion in order for their logic to say, yeah, that's a good decision. Remember, the heart chooses first, the right brain chooses first. So keep that in mind as you build your PowerPoint. This has been fun. Thank you all very much. And I'm Jan Bailey and Shona Welsh with Ovation Speaker Training. And if you've got questions, I think we're going to do a little question and answer thing now, but of course you can always check us out, and we are at ovationspeakertraining.com, and we're always doing cool stuff with Sandbox, so do visit us. And thank you, Mackenzie, that was fabulous.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. That was beyond fabulous. I mean, one, I'm craving cookies now, so thanks. I'm sure everybody else is. And two, who knew that there was a worse PowerPoint award? And so that was really cool to find out too. So let's get to some questions. I know some people have submitted some in the Q&A chat. So the first one we have is, should we be considering the virtual meeting aspects in our PowerPoint presentations? How does this differ from in-person presentations? So you've touched on this.
Yeah, for sure we did. I think that we're all hoping that we'll go back live, that's for sure. And when you do, you really have to consider all the body language things that we talked about, just in a kind of a bigger format. but I suspect we've answered most of those questions, or most of that question, just by watching the PowerPoint. All of those things to consider. So Shona, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I think if you go to the website Sandbox, our previous workshop was talking about, our previous webinar was about effective video conferencing presentation. And so, yeah, you do need to be worried about it. And if you watch that video, we go through some pointers on why people are so exhausted at being on video conferencing all the time, and share some tips with you on how do you keep their interest and energy going. Today, we did concentrate on the feeling and the visuals and the voice. And there's some more tips in that webinar.
What would be your best advice for presenting information when presenting via Zoom and a live audience simultaneously? So if you're doing both.
Very good. Wow, that's a great question.
Very good question. Just to ramp it up a bit.
Yeah, again, visuals are always going to be your friend. And when you've got the multiple ways that you are connecting with people, you've got, the visual works both ways, right? So when people are on video conferencing and they're connecting remotely, they're going to want to be interested and engaged in your PowerPoint. So just like the stuff we did today, and again, looking at that other webinar, using all of those tools, and you can do that in person because the same rules apply, right? Your energy, your body language, visuals, storytelling, connecting to emotion, it's really all the same. You just have to work harder over a screen because that doesn't translate as well. Want to add something to that, Jen?
Yeah, what I would like to add to that too is if you, in that scenario, so if I'm presenting and there's people here in the room with me at these tables, when you're presenting, you're obviously looking at those participants that are here in the room with you and you're making eye contact with them. That's pretty much presenting 101, I hope. So what I would suggest to you too is that you just consider the camera lens to be another person in the room. So you're not spending all your time staring at the camera or the screen. You're not spending all your time looking at the people in the audience. You're simply roving through the room, talking to these people that are here. I'm including the camera in my conversation as well, and then I include it, right? So you think of the camera as another human in the room, and that will help A, relax you, and B, make the people on the other side of the camera feel like they're included or involved in the presentation.
Good point. And remember, you're looking at the camera, not at the picture on the screen. At the camera, then it looks like you're looking.
Awesome.
I like that.
The next question we have, this would probably help me out. What is your suggestion on how to speak clearly and concisely when speaking the spoken word? So I know with names, for me, that is obviously hard. So what would your best advice be?
That lightened up the start. That's great. I think you have to acknowledge and laugh at yourself sometimes, right? We all screw up.
Yes.
So that's great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We do tongue twisters.
Yeah.
We do warm-ups before we speak. We do warm-ups before we present, and we actually do tongue twisters. And I know that may sound silly to some of you, and I'm not talking about for half an hour prior to our presentation or anything, but just to increase our energy, to increase our, what's another word for energy, your engagement level, to sort of get
to warm up your muscles.
Yeah. And exactly, to relax. And one of my favorite ones, I think Shona probably has a favorite as well, but one of my favorite is the lips, the teeth, the tip of the tongue. And it hits all the hard sounds in the language. And so you say that a few times, the lips, the teeth, the tip of the tongue. And then I would say, Shona, now say that happy. And she'd go, the lips, the teeth, the tip of the tongue, right? Now be angry, the lips, the teeth, the tip of the tongue. So I know it's silly and I know we're laughing and making light of it, but it is unbelievably effective because it calms your nerves, it makes you laugh, and it makes you conscious of being articulate and clear. That's my first tip.
Yeah, pick your favorite tongue twister. We use like, I don't know, a gazillion of them. Red leather, yellow leather is one of my favorites.
I have a hard time with that one.
Red leather, yellow, or unique New York. That one messes me up every time. Unique New York. But another tip besides tongue twisters is, one of the things to remember is that your voice can be muffled over a microphone when you're on video conferencing. So pay attention to your enunciation as well as your volume. In other words, we do tend to cut off the ends of words. I'm going, I'm going to the store. I'm going to the store helps your enunciation. And if there are words you're not sure of, write them out phonetically on a little index card. So in the last webinar, we talked about our little cheat sheet index cards that we tape right next to our camera, just to make sure it's got our key points on it and we remember. So you can write out a word phonetically, and then you're making sure you're pronouncing it right. So that will help with your enunciation as well.
That's perfect. Thank you. So the next question we have, keeping up with a short attention span is critical if you present. Any suggestions? So I know you mentioned visual aids are obviously important. Your examples were great. Do you have any other additional tips maybe in terms of short attention spans and catering to those short attention spans?
I think that when we think about, because again, referring to the previous webinar that we did, we talked about engagement, and we talked about, unfortunately, the attention span of a goldfish is actually longer than the attention span of the average human, which is very tragic. But that aside, I think when people think about, oh, I have to change it up to keep people's attention, they're not dramatic changes. If you have a change in the tone of your voice, if you have a change in the pace, if you have a little pause, all of those things automatically cue people's brain to go, oh, wait, something just happened, something changed, something's different, and that will re-engage your audience. So it's really important, and when we work with people in any kind of speaking, it's really important that you use your voice in the whole range that it is capable of reaching. So the high notes, the low notes. So be aware, like a piano, you would never play the piano and listen to a song with only these 8 notes. You want to hit the full range of your emotions, the full range of your tone, and try and find those inflections and that interest and engagement in your speaking, in particular when you're delivering a PowerPoint. And then of course, all of the things that we talked about, think in pictures when you're preparing your PowerPoint.
Even a couple of simple things keeps up interest. So for example, Jan and I are both presenting together and we switched back and forth, and that allows your brain, even just switching presenters is entertaining and some kind of new thing for your brain, and it kind of re-engages. And then again, I mentioned we did 2 different things. We had Jan on the screen the whole time with the PowerPoint, and then I most of the time was not. And just think about your audience and what's most comfortable. We had a debate. Is it more distracting to have someone on the screen while the PowerPoint is there, or vice versa? So we did both. You can choose for yourself. But yeah, changing focus, even just having someone else speak or stopping screen sharing, is a shift. And yeah, our attention span is about 8 seconds, but we can hang in there for maximum 20. And then our brain needs totally a break. So if you're having, for example, 2-hour meetings.
20 seconds, whoa.
20 minutes. Our brain cycles in 20-minute phases. So if you're having a 2-hour meeting, have some, like a 5-minute break every 20 minutes or something different so people can just feel refreshed in their brain.
One last question here before we head off. Henry says, thanks Jan and Shona for an engaging presentation. What is the best way of engaging an audience in a short exercise plus short video plus a PowerPoint?
Plus. Well, you have it all. You
got
it.
Yeah.
You got the
formula.
3. I don't know if there's a formula. What's great about what you just said, Henry, is that you've got 3 different things.
Yeah. You're doing everything. That's great.
Fantastic. There may be something more specific you're asking. What's the best way to do that? I guess a simple answer is just making sure you practice the transitions among those 3 things beforehand, because all of us have been to these webinars where it's like, okay, I'm going to share my screen now. Oh, wait a minute. It's not, practice that beforehand. What we call make a professional entrance. Make sure you've got that all organized, and just do, you can look at yourself on Zoom with your own personal free account just to see how it goes, or Zoom with a friend and practice it beforehand.
I know that when I first started 100 years ago doing facilitating and doing workshops, I always put way too much into my workshops. And I always tried to do way too much with my audience, and I always tried to get them to do these complicated, what I thought were simple but turned out to be unbelievably complex things, because it's like, I don't know what happens, but we get together in groups and it's like we can't we can't quite figure out how to do things. So Henry, really break it down into very simple steps if you're going to ask your audience to do things, if you're going to get them to participate in some way. Make sure that it's very simple. And I'm not suggesting that your audience is not that bright. They are very smart people, I am sure, but something happens in between the explanation and the doing. So really, really simple, 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 simple as you go through any kind of participation or exercise or workshop that you're doing.
I'll add one final thing to that really short, Mackenzie, because I know we've got to go. I do tend to do that too. I have too much information, but the beauty of that, Henry, is you've got too much information. So you stick to the key things that Jan talked about. And if something happens and you need more, you need more material, you need more exercises, just pull it out, the stuff you've already presented. But it's on the actual day. Keep it short, keep it simple, like Jan said.